In a dramatic escalation of rhetoric, President Donald Trump has signaled a potential shift in his approach to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, expressing frustration with Russian President Vladimir Putin's recent actions. Speaking via a post on Truth Social on Saturday, April 26, 2025, Trump suggested that Putin may be deliberately undermining U.S. efforts to broker peace in Eastern Europe. His comments come in the wake of deadly Russian missile strikes on Ukrainian civilian areas, including the capital, Kyiv, which have intensified international scrutiny of the ongoing war. There was no reason for Putin to be shooting missiles into civilian areas, cities and towns over the last few days, Trump wrote, his tone reflecting growing impatience. It makes me think that maybe he doesn't want to stop the war, he's just tapping me along and has to be dealt with differently through banking or secondary sanctions? Too many people are dying. The mention of banking measures and secondary sanctions hints at a possible pivot toward harsher economic penalties on Russia, a departure from Trump's earlier optimism about negotiating a swift resolution. The president's remarks followed a whirlwind trip to Rome for Pope Francis's funeral, where he briefly met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The 15-minute encounter, their first face-to-face since a tense Oval Office meeting earlier this year, has sparked speculation about the state of U.S.-Ukraine relations. The White House has remained tight-lipped, offering no details on the discussion, leaving analysts to parse Trump's public statements for clues. Trump's latest comments mark a stark contrast to his stance just a week ago, when he dismissed suggestions that he was being outmaneuvered in negotiations, declaring, "Nobody's playing me." This shift comes amid mounting challenges in his administration's push for a permanent truce. Top officials have signaled in recent days that the U.S. may abandon talks if Russia and Ukraine fail to reach an agreement soon, a move that could reshape the conflict's trajectory. The president also took aim at Ukrainian leadership, expressing frustration with Zelensky's delay in signing a minerals agreement with the U.S. The deal, expected to be finalized nearly 2 months ago, was abruptly postponed, adding to tensions. Trump's irritation with Zelensky follows his earlier criticism of the Ukrainian leader for resisting territorial concessions, particularly regarding Russian-occupied Crimea. In his Truth Social post, Trump lashed out at the media, singling out the New York Times and reporter Peter Baker for what he called biased coverage. He accused Baker of pushing unrealistic demands, such as Ukraine reclaiming Crimea, which Trump suggested would prolong the conflict. "No matter what deal I make with respect to Russia/Ukraine, no matter how good it is, even if it's the greatest deal ever made, the failing New York Times will speak badly of it," Trump wrote. He went on to blame former President Barack Obama for enabling Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea, arguing that Obama's inaction allowed Moscow to seize the territory, without even a shot being fired. Trump's narrative of the war remains consistent with his campaign rhetoric. He reiterated his claim that the conflict, which he described as former President Biden's war, would not have occurred under his leadership. "It was a loser from day one and should have never happened and wouldn't have happened if I were president at the time," he wrote. "I'm just trying to clean up the mess that was left to me by Obama and Biden, and what a mess it is." The president's recent statements have drawn mixed reactions. Posts on X reflect a polarized sentiment, with some users praising Trump's willingness to confront Putin, while others criticize his approach as capitulation to Russian aggression. One post claimed Trump's peace plan would freeze the current front line, allowing Russia to retain most of its territorial gains, a prospect that has alarmed European allies. Another suggested Trump is abandoning negotiations rather than risking a direct confrontation with Putin, citing his reluctance to impose new sanctions or increase aid to Ukraine. Trump's assertion in a Time magazine interview that Ukraine provoked the war by pursuing NATO membership has also stirred controversy. He argued that Russia would be making a significant concession by agreeing not to fully occupy Ukraine, a position that critics say downplays Moscow's aggression. Meanwhile, Russia's recent violation of limited ceasefires and rejection of Trump's proposed unilateral ceasefire have complicated diplomatic efforts. As the war grinds on, the human toll continues to mount. Russian strikes on civilian targets, including a ballistic missile attack on Sumy that Trump called a mistake, have drawn international condemnation. The president's reluctance to sell Ukraine Patriot air defense systems, reportedly valued at $15 billion, has further strained relations with Kyiv. With negotiations faltering, the Trump administration faces a critical juncture. Will the U.S. double down on economic pressure as Trump's mention of sanctions suggests, or walk away from talks as officials have hinted? The answers could redefine America's role in the conflict and its relationships with both Russia and Ukraine. For now, the world watches as Trump navigates this high-stakes diplomatic gamble, with the specter of further violence looming over Eastern Europe.